It's all about transfers here on the Scottish SunSport YouTube channel this summer, and that is of course what we're talking about today. And Rangers are in focus. I'm Jonathon Moar, this is Roger Hanna, our head of sport here. And Roger, it's already been a big week at Ibrox, even though we're only into the second day of the week. The Supremos in town for the first time, and that investment is just about to happen now, isn't it?
Very interesting to hear Andrew Kavanagh and Parag Marathi speaking yesterday. £20 million investment. Some of that, Jonathan, inevitably will go to the fixtures and fittings. It will go to maintenance at Ibrox. It will go to the training ground as well. But there will be money there for Russell Martin to spend it, and he can generate more as well. You know, you need to remember there will be sales. I think Cyriel Dessers is still at the exit door, potentially going to AEK Athens. I'd be surprised if Ruud van Yilmaz didn't move out. And you know, there are other fringe players that Russell Martin will get a look at now that they're back at the training ground, and he can generate money with putting people out the door.
We will touch upon all those players you've just mentioned in a moment. In terms of incomings, obviously time is of the essence. I suppose it has been for a while, but with the Champions League qualifiers just a few weeks away, do you expect things to start to fall into place now in terms of these incomings? Max Aarons, you would say, seems maybe the one that's closest to being done.
I'm not sure the next day or two. You always get to this time of year, you know, club's financial years end on the 30th of June. It really just depends whether they want to put the money into this year's accounts or next year's accounts. So I think there were players already lined up. I think deals will already be done, but they might just be waiting to the 1st of July to announce. And it's not just Rangers that do it, other teams do it as well.
Would you include maybe Kwame Poku in that sort of conversation as well?
I know he's one that Russell Martin was very keen to get in, spoke to him. Birmingham and QPR have always been in the kind of periphery of this. As we stand here just now, and listen, anything can happen with these deals, I still suspect Poku will be a Rangers player. It's
a position as well that has to be a priority with Czerny going, and then you consider the players that are already there. It needs strengthening, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and Hadji and Lawrence were away as well. There are guys at the football club that I'm not convinced of long-term futures at the club in those positions. Ross McCausland, Nedim Bajrami, Kieran Dowell, guys like that. So it doesn't surprise me he's targeted Poku.
Going back to the defence, briefly mentioned Max Aarons, player that looks like that's going to be done. Conor Coady is another name that's emerged as a potential target. Looks like he could well be a player that Russell Martin wants to get in. Do you like what he would bring? It would be sort of very much needed leadership to that team that maybe it doesn't have.
He's a good character. I think you said in the show last week, you know, he was one that Gareth Southgate would take into England squads, not necessarily to start games, but because he, you know, he was a good character in the camp, a bit like Thomas Tuchel's brought Jordan Henderson back in for that reason as well. So I think he would be a good guy to have at the club. He's still a capable player. You know, he's played in the English Premier League for a number of years now. He's won caps for England. He's a good footballer. I think he would be valuable if Rangers could get him in.
Now that's a centre-back that could be coming in. One that could be going the other way, of course, is Robin Propper. Been consistently linked to that return to 20. Had all seemed to go a little bit quiet, but then today there's been developments. 20 sporting director reiterating the club still was that interest in him, and obviously spoke about before previously, you know, Propper wanted to have these talks, I think, with Russell Martin just to iron out what exactly the case was, which he obviously hasn't had the chance to do until this week. But would you still expect that to be a player that's going to be leaving Ibrox this summer?
I would. I would imagine Russell Martin might need a revolving door in his office this week now that they're back, because Robin Propper will be one of, I'm going to say, half a dozen or more players in that position wanting clarity on their futures. Do they have a future at Rangers, or are they going to be shipped out? I just can't see Robin Propper being involved. He underachieved last season. He did score against Celtic in an Old Firm win at Ibrox at New Year, but I think that would be the highlight of his Rangers career, and there were a few lowlights.
You mentioned fringe players there, obviously Ben Davis, Kieran Dowell arriving together pre-season training yesterday. The likes of Rabbi Matondo, Jose Cifuentes, all these players still on the books. Do you think any of those or any of the others that you've maybe touched upon have any chance of a future at Rangers whatsoever? It's
difficult to say. You don't know what Russell Martin's take on these players are. Ben Davis and Kieran Dowell did nothing at Rangers. They went away on loan. They've won League One title medals at Birmingham City, but England's League One is far removed from playing for Rangers. So I'm not sure any of those players that you mentioned necessarily have a future. But Russell Martin might just have seen something in one of them. I think Kieran Dow played a slightly different position when he went to Birmingham. He's got out the right-hand side a lot, which he hadn't been at Rangers. So you don't know, but I think it's a long way back for some of them, Cifuentes especially.
Yeah, you would think so now. Player you touched on at the very beginning, Roger, Cyriel Dessers. This one's kind of been bubbling away for what feels like an eternity now, the move to AK Athens. Reports coming out of Greece in the last couple of days that he's agreed the terms, but it's still, the clubs haven't quite agreed that. Where are we with that one just now?
I'm not surprised Dessers has agreed, because it did seem quite lucrative, the individual terms on offer to the player over in Greece. Rangers will try, as they should, to try and get as much out of the deal as they possibly can. I think the deal will happen. It's just one of those deals that looks to make sense for everyone, Jonathan. Cyriel's now, he's 30. He'll be looking for a deal to make a bit of money. This is probably his last big contract of his career. AEK Athens clearly like him, so it's a good deal for them. And I just think it's a new era for Rangers. I would imagine Russell Martin, like most managers, when they go into a club, they've got their eye on a striker somewhere. And I just think it just makes sense for Dessers to go now.
I'll be watching that one in the coming days for sure. Now, that would leave Hamza Igamane, obviously, as one of the sort of two high-profile first-team strikers left at the club as it stands.
With
Danilo, yes. Igamane, nothing concrete, but there's always talk of clubs being interested. Unsurprising, I suppose, given his profile, but would you be surprised if he ended up being moved on at all this summer? Is he a player you very much see being a part of things there?
You know, people talk about sales at Rangers, this player trading model, and they'll throw up, Raskin or Diamande or Igamane or people like that. I'm not quite sure any of the three of them are quite ready to go yet. I'm not sure they've quite done enough to earn a sort of big move. You look across the city, people will talk about, maybe Nicolas Kuhn going to RB Leipzig. You can see that because Kuhn shone for a while last year. You can see the attraction. People have spoken about, is this the summer that Rio Hattati might go somewhere? There's interest from Italy in Hattati. There's interest from Turkey and Diaz and Maida. I think maybe January or maybe next summer if the players have shone again for Rangers. But I really don't see any of them quite ready to make that big money move this summer. I think they'll all start the season with Rangers.
And as you mentioned, Rangers will be looking to recruit in that area as well as keeping a hold of Igamane as well. One of the players that's been mentioned is Dor Turgeman, the Israeli striker. Also reports in Israel, given the situation that's going on there with the conflict with Iran just now, that maybe Maccabi Tel Aviv had to have a little bit of a rethink with their transfer strategy. Obviously feeling they might not be able to attract foreign players for obvious reasons and maybe have to keep a hold of players like this. So could potentially a bit of a difficult one, maybe more difficult to look to get this one done.
I think that could be right. You can understand, we're sitting here talking about geopolitics now, Jonathan, and a lot will depend on the player's thoughts. Does the player want to stay in Israel? Does the player want to go overseas? Will Maccabi let him go? As you say, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to attract an overseas player to replace him. Do they have Israeli players behind Turgeman to come into the team and replace him? We don't know that. So it will be interesting to see. He's a decent player. He's a decent player. He's a type of player you can see Rangers trying to get. Again, you look across the city, and Celtic are going for that sort of, the player they can get in for a lower fee, the likes of Benjamin Nigrin and Shinya Mada have been mentioned there. This is clearly one that Rangers have looked at and believe that they can get in, but it might be difficult to get over the line.
Well, a player that would be available for no fee, in fact, is Lawrence Shankland. Anyone playing transfer bingo would have been waiting to hear when that name would eventually be mentioned at some point, so there it is. Obviously not signed that new deal at Hearts, a free agent. He was spotted out in Dubai training with James Tavernier. I think some fans are wondering, is there maybe something there? Could they be teammates? He's been tipped for the move to Rangers, Stephen Naismith. Obviously heavily linked to the move to Rangers for some time now. Not so much this window, probably because of his form last season. Do you think that's something that could happen?
It's good to know that we Nazy watches our Rangers transfer shows, because I said that 7 days ago when I was here with Brian Rowe. I said Rangers should go for Lawrence Shankland, Danny Armstrong and Josh Mulligan. They're all Scots, they're all free, they wouldn't be huge wages, they would bolster the squad at a time when you need home-based players in that squad. So I think Nazy probably saw that before he said at the end of last week, go for Naismith. He knows the player well. For me, it's a no-brainer. I'm not going to say bring Lawrence Shankland in and give him 50 games and have him leading the line in the Champions League group stages. Not at all. But when you look at what Rangers have got at the minute, and you look at some of the difficulties they've got, with some of these players coming in, I just think Shankland, he didn't have a great spell for 3/4 of last season. But he was Footballer of the Year before. There's a suggestion he maybe Rangers minded Jonathon. So I don't think it would be difficult to deal with if Rangers went to get him. And I just think that type of player can be valuable to Rangers.
And surely at this stage of his career, it's a move that he would love to make.
Yeah, and if he doesn't make it this summer, Jonathon, he's never making it.
Yeah. Now, back to players that are still at Rangers. Been plenty of develops in Nico Raskin since you were last in this room with Ryan last week. The club's been credited with interest, seem to be growing. Wolves, the latest English Premier League club, being linked somewhere. But then obviously Derek McGregor had the exclusive over the weekend that Rangers are going to look to basically tie him down to an extended contract. We talked and go ballistic before the end of the season about this building a team around a player, and it looks like that's what Russell Martin does want to do with Raskin. But do you think even if he signs a new deal, would that put an end to this transfer talk, or is it just going to strengthen Rangers' hand if somebody does come calling?
And sometimes, you talk about Dessers leaving, suiting everybody. You wonder if a new contract extension might suit everybody. I don't think Raskin will go this summer, but if he signs an extension, he will get more money than he's currently on. Rangers would have the player on a longer contract and probably be able to demand a bit more in terms of a transfer fee. It gives Raskin a bit more kudos at the club. He's already the captain's armband before. If you remember when Tavernier missed games at the start of the year, including the Old Firm game, he had the armband then. He is emerging in that leadership group at Rangers as an important player. I think he probably deserves a contract extension. He deserves a pay rise. As I say, I can't quite see him going this summer, but it wouldn't surprise me if he signed a deal in the knowledge that there could be a clause in it that says, if you mentioned Wolves, anyone comes in for him, meets that clause, he can just go.
Yeah, very interesting one to watch anyway, for sure. Just before we finish up, Roger, one more player to mention, that's Oscar Cortes. Yeah. Obviously, Lyle Cameron done, Oscar Cortes, that obligation to buy. All kind of went a bit quiet around him, then he turned up to training, the back of a taxi, interestingly, yesterday. So, that injury-ravaged spell, plenty of calls, including from our own Chris Boyd, saying Rangers should be trying to get out of that deal if there was a way, but he's back in the building, he's going to be there. Is he going to get a chance under Russell Martin this year, do you think, to prove he can ultimately be the player that he needs?
We don't know what Russell Martin's team is going to look like. I think he's got a chance. Looks as if the obligation to buy is going to be an obligation to buy. They're not going to get out it. He's arrived, he's going to do his work. I saw him at Easter Road, come on at Easter Road in the last day of last season. Didn't look terrible. It's not as if he's played a run of 10 or 12 games and has looked a poor player. He just hasn't really had a run of 10 or 12 games. And you've got to give the lad the benefit of the doubt. He might come in and shine this season. It is an area, as we said at the top of the show, it is an area where Rangers need players. They need width, they need attacking-minded players, bit of penetration. That's part of the problem last season. They couldn't break teams down. So maybe Cortes is going to be a guy who can be the key to that. I think he'll get a chance. And it's like anything else, John, it's up to these players to take those chances. Absolutely, not the only one in that boat. Well, Roger, as always, thank you very much. Don't forget the Rangers transfer specials are here every Tuesday, and the Celtic ones are every Friday right here on the Scottish SunSport YouTube channel. You can also find Derek McGregor's brilliant one-on-one series. Eric Black was the most recent one last week. 3 parts of that to get your teeth into it, so you can go and enjoy that as well. But as I said, we're back here with the Celtic transfer special at the end of the week. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep across our website for all the very latest transfer news.